On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, financial train wrecks.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Shawn Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Shawn Yesner, owner and founder of Yesner Law, and welcome back remotely today, your financial coach, George Corbello. Welcome, George.
How are you, sir? I'm glad to be remote in this virtual world, and with if you're on the video, you'll see how terrible my background is, but that's okay.
Well, and if you're watching the video, you'll see I'm in a tie, but that's only because I had a hearing this morning. So
he's so professional, though, but he looks good. You look good, well, Shawn. It's good to see you face to face.
Yeah, every once in a while, I actually have to dress like an attorney.
Well, it's okay. You got to fake it till you make it. One day, buddy, one day.
Fake it till you make it. Although it's funny, yesterday I had just shaved. I was on a Zoom call yesterday with our friend Tiffany Kellogg. And I noticed when I pulled up the Zoom call, we were recording something. And I noticed when I pulled up the Zoom call, I had my sideburns were not shaved evenly. So I was like, wait a minute, Tiffany. She's like, we go to air in 2 minutes. I'm home. Let me grab my razor. Meanwhile,
too good.
Getting back to the actual topic of the podcast, I guess, would be helpful today, wouldn't it?
It would.
We're going to talk today about a bunch of different topics, some financial train wrecks, some things that we've done to actually help people who are in trouble. We'll try to keep the topics today relevant to what we're talking about here on the Crushing Debt Podcast. Before we get there real quick, I want to talk about one of our two sponsors, Mark Purvis. If you go to legacyspotlight.com, Mark is our editor. He is an award-winning videographer. And so what he will do through this legacyspotlight.com, he'll record the stories. He'll record your stories. He'll record stories of previous generations that you can pass on to future generations. He does make it fun. So I would say if you have a story that you want to preserve, if you have stories of other family members that you want to preserve, go to legacyspotlight.com and contact Mark, and he will help make that happen. But what George and I were talking about, what we thought would be an interesting topic for the podcast is financial train wrecks. Obviously, as an attorney, I can't give out specific client name or information. We gotta change the names to protect the guilty. But I figured we'd go through.
Even if it's about myself. Oh, okay. Let me shout myself out then. Okay, good.
Well,
good
if
to know.
If it's about you, I won't call the person George. I'll call him Jorge.
Fair enough.
So I don't know. You got one for us, or you want me to start?
Start us off, my friend.
So the first financial train wreck always has to do with businesses shutting down. And I get the same question from all business owners, which is, can I just close the doors? And the answer is most times yes. I mean, if you shut the doors of the business, you might have inventory that needs to be sold. You might have, like if I shut down the law firm, I've got the recording equipment here. I've got the desks. I've got the computers. I've got stuff that creates value. But where the owners really fall into traps is the personal guarantees that they sign for the debt that the business incurs. And so if I shut down the law firm's creditors may not get any money, but I guaranteed that the law firm would make the lease payments to my landlord, so the landlord can chase after me for the unpaid lease payments. Right. I guaranteed the credit card, the law firm credit card that I put all the filing fees and whatnot on. So if I don't pay that back and I shut down the business, I'm still responsible to pay back that credit card because it's personally guaranteed. So a lot of business owners don't realize, and one of the ways they get into some real problems here is, I'm going to shut down the business owes all this money. Well, it does, and if the business has no assets, good luck creditor collecting, but then the creditors look to the guarantees and they see, well, what did the owner sign for that we can possibly go after the owner for?
Is there something, as a business owner, if you're thinking in those, is that something I need to be looking at today on contracts or agreements? What am I looking at as a business owner when I'm thinking retiring? I'm hoping in a good way, right? It's not always the lack of money or something went wrong. But what are some of the things as a business owner that I should be putting in place?
Well, a lot of times the guarantee is non-negotiable. So the bank will say, if you want the money, you got to sign the guarantee. The landlord will say, if you want the lease, you got to sign the guarantee. Now, if your company is 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, publicly traded, I don't think the the CEO of Coca-Cola is signing guarantees. The
Right.
CEO of Anheuser-Busch is not signing personal guarantees anymore.
Right.
But for small businesses like what we have and what a lot of my clients have, a lot of times the landlord will say you can't have the space without signing the guarantee. The bank, the SBA, will say you can't have our small business funding unless you sign this personal guarantee. And one thing in particular to look out for with SBA loans are personal guarantees and second and third mortgages. So sometimes the SBA will take out a second or third mortgage against your house to give you the business loan.
Wow.
And if they do that and your business goes out of business, now you've got a mortgage that you have to pay. Otherwise, the SBA can foreclose your home. So,
So that's some layers right there. Depending on, is that something that it should be told in the process itself? But are we sometimes a little too easy in signing on the dotted line without reading the details? What's your take on some of that in your past history?
I mean, typically it'll say guarantee. Or unconditional guarantee, or so. Yeah,
Right.
It'll either be a part of the note that you're signing, or maybe it's its own separate document. It's not really hidden. It should say guarantee, but again, that's another reason that maybe you do want to hire an attorney. I mean, I've done it before where I've looked over closing documents for clients, and it's not terribly expensive. It's a couple of $100. The problem is, if I find a guarantee and you don't want to sign a guarantee, now we're talking about, do we cancel the entire loan or not? So
Right.
you do have to be careful. I mean, if you're just starting out, you may not have the negotiating power to say, I'm not signing a guarantee. If you're 10, 15 years in business and millions of dollars of revenue every year, maybe you got some leverage to go to the bank and go to the landlord and go to the creditors and say, hey, terminate that guarantee or I'm going to a lender that won't make me sign one.
Interesting there. Well, some of the train wrecks that I've kind of come across and seen as well, a lot of it are stories in regards to wire transfers and scammers. That for me is a big one, especially when you're talking, tens of thousands of dollars, right? But what's the story we hear sometimes is, I'm in the middle of looking to buy a house. And of course, you're talking about, double-digit numbers when it comes to money and transfer. Hey, I need to transfer my down payment for, the type of loan, or if I'm building a home, there's got to be money that gets transferred in those instances. A lot of times, we do it via text, via email, and what's the worst case scenario in those situations? You get an email that you think is connected to the lender or the builder or any of those situations, and you click on the link. It looks legit. You send your money, and then all of a sudden, your bank account is blank with that money, and the money is gone, and it's untraceable in these kind of situations. When we're in those situations, I think a lot of times it's kind of like, what? It's this email, and I got it looked like it came from this bank or this person, and scammers are getting really good in those situations. So for me, my heart would drop if you're talking like down payments of $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to build the home, and you make the wrong, and it's not your fault, but you make the wrong click, and all of a sudden you're back at square one. So for me, that's a huge train wreck. That's not even of our causing.
Yeah, 5 figures is easy. I have a client, a title company client, that got popped for 6 figures.
Ooh.
And what a lot of times the scammers will do is they'll intercept an email. They'll make it look like someone is sending it, but there'll be something off. It'll be a letter that's off. Instead of Gmail, it'll be Gmale instead of Gmail, or it'll be
that's creative.
They put slight changes in there, and so the title company thought that it had the right person, ended up sending the money. It ended up being a scam. We had to get the FBI involved, and I think we only it was a couple $100,000, and I think we recovered like 80. And the rest of it, we had to make a claim, or the title company, my client, had to make a claim on their cyber insurance policy and get that claim paid. But yeah, a lot of times what I'll do is if I know that I have to send a wire transfer to somebody, I will ask them to email me the wire transfer information, and then I will call them and say, okay, here's the wire transfer information I got from you. Is this correct? And then I'll take it to the bank. So I'll verbally verify it before I send the wire out.
Those are great tips. If it's coming in an unsecure email, that's maybe a red flag in those situations. I would say definitely secure mail. They have ways to be able to get to a portal with the escrow company or the companies that we're working with. And the biggest tip, if it feels not right, call the people and get the instructions. Because once again, we go into this mode of, we skim the instructions. Oh, I think I get it. This is not building IKEA.
Yeah.
This is, you're about to make a huge transfer of money itself. Make sure we have everything correct and don't put yourself in that position. And this is not a fault of people. I get that. I mean, I've read stories. You said 6 figures. I read a story online that it was, that there was a family in California, $800,000.
Wow.
And they couldn't recover the money. I mean, they probably are in good shape or not good shape, but my goodness, that's a lot of money to lose.
Yeah.
So in these situations, I'm like, follow through. If it feels wrong, make the phone call. There's never a guarantee, but man, for me, that's a huge situation that I would worry about.
I got one today. From PayPal that said, click on this link to pay this $1,500 invoice. I don't owe anybody $1,500 through PayPal. Yep. So now what I did, instead of clicking on the invoice, I went directly to my PayPal account and logged in. And sure enough, it shows nothing on the PayPal portal. So I didn't click on the link. And it's also funny because the email, even though it came to me, my name was not in the to field of the email. So it just went to, blasted out on some BCC to, blind carbon copy to a whole bunch of other people. So no, if especially if it's finances, I won't click on a link in an email, period.
Makes sense.
So
all right,
I have kind of along the same line.
What's yours? Yeah.
Ponzi schemes. And I actually have a client right now who I will say victim of the Ponzi scheme, but not really. The guy operating the Ponzi scheme would send her gifts, like send her flowers or send her whatever. Well, when the Ponzi scheme was finally found out and came crashing down, the federal court that was suing her in another state, not even in Florida, the federal court that was suing her said, we believe that this guy was sending you money, and so we're suing you for X hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, all my client, and I grilled this poor lady. I feel so bad, but I needed to know the truth. And I believe her that she says the only thing that she ever got from this guy were trinkets, flowers. If it was money, it was a couple of bucks here, never more than maybe $100, $50, whatever it was, but never anything of any significance. And so, we did end up settling. We did end up settling with the receiver in the federal court for a few $1,000s just to kind of make him go away. And ironically, I've had that money sitting in my trust account for probably about a year now, and they haven't asked me to pay it to the court yet. But yeah, getting sucked up into a Ponzi scheme, I think, is another way that I've seen clients get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that hurts. And those are situations where you think you're aware or not aware. Oh, this can't be this bad. I mean, what it goes back to, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
And those are, but once again, I think people are just really good at selling and making us feel good to be able to kind of get roped into these situations. I mean, scammers are one thing, emails, but these are situations where you're, building relationships, thinking you're a part of some type of community or something, and you get roped in, you get sucked in. So it's, oof.
Well, and this guy, and I feel bad for my client. My client was an older lady, single, and so this guy was romanticizing her. And so,
of course,
even I remember, gosh, in the very, very early days of AOL, I was in law school.
AOL for the young kids.
Yeah. I was in law school, and I had just split with my girlfriend of 6 years. I mean, I dated this girl all through the end of high school, all through college. I'm in law school. I'm surfing the internet one night, and I go into one of these chat rooms, and I get a message request from somebody. And the picture is this beautiful, blonde, blue eye, amazing looks. And we start a conversation and we're going back and forth and flirting online and all this stuff. And then suddenly I get the email from her that says, I need to come to the United States. I would love to come see you, but I need to get out of where I am now, where I forget where, some foreign country. If you could send me, at that point, I was like, yeah, no. I hope you're lying to me, and I hope you're trying to scam me, because no, I am not paying for you to come. I'm not sending you money so you can come to the United States. At least I give myself credit for recognizing that it was a scam, even back then.
I mean, that's the thing too. We got a lot of folks who are, in those situations that, we're lonely, we're not making those connections in our community. I'd imagine that's been going crazy even with the COVID and the COVID lockdowns as well. So it's good that you recognize.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine there's some folks, right? They're like, oh, it's no big deal. It's only $500. It's only $1,000. And, I'd imagine there would be added costs there too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem there is, even if it's only $50, $100, $500, once you send that to them, they now have access to your accounts. And so what may start as $100 or $500 quickly turns into $5,000 because they invade your account.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's these are train wrecks, horror stories.
Yeah. I don't know. Train wrecks or so you got one for us?
I got one for you though. Payday loans. Again, horror stories, train wrecks when it comes to that. Some of us are in that mode today, trying to make ends meet. Eggs are like 5 car payments now. So there's a lot that we're dealing with when it comes to, just managing our monthly expenses. And we get into those situations where, oh, it sounds great. Like just, get my paycheck instantly, get it 5 days early, or you get sold on these get the cash quick, or car title loans, or whatever it might be. And they all sound good, but we think credit cards are, crazy when it comes to the interest. Payday loans itself can be, 200, 300, 1,000% interest in I'd rather just be friends with my local loan shark. I mean, that's basically what it's turned into when it comes to money. But once you get into that cycle, it's like paying that off. It just becomes, never, especially with those types of interests. I mean, you borrowed $300, it turns into $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 instantly. Yeah. And I think that for me is, it's easy to fall into, but boy, very hard to get out of.
Yeah, and I think the business equivalent of that are these receivable loans. So businesses, for those of you that have heard this, they're the biggest company out there that I know of that does these types of loans is Cabbage. There's also On Deck. And so they will give the business a loan, and in order to repay the loan, they take a distribution weekly in most cases from your receivables. So, or they'll tie it to your credit card merchant service processing. So they'll just swipe it, and it's funny, of all the businesses that I've seen fail, a majority of them have these short-term business loans, which are designed to save the company. But in a lot of cases, the repayment terms are so onerous that they end up killing the company because they just can't. They're not getting the receivables in fast enough to pay the weekly payments to the short-term funding company. And I've had multiple clients that either have ended up in bankruptcy or just flat out going out of business because they can't afford to pay these receivable loans back.
And that's the thing. A lot of them, I'd imagine, probably don't know their P&L, right? They don't have, they're just thinking like, I just need to get an infusion of cash. I can buy product and I can sell the stuff and I'll be okay. We'll be in a good situation. That's what gets you into trouble, because you just don't know how the numbers are going to work out. And you're just thinking the infusion is going to help. Does it? And again, repayment is what probably, trying to get those things taken care of. That's just, that can be crazy quick too, I'd imagine.
Yeah. It ends up.
I would say we always talk about like, spend, less than you make, right? That's always the case. Business wise, for me, business and personal, how do you avoid those things? Emergency funds, right? Having some kind of, something in place that allows you to deal with these financial situations where we don't have to turn to these types of not very good companies, the way they treat their customers. So that's for me. I'm good there.
Yeah.
What about you, bro? What's another one?
So I wrote down gambling, and then right underneath it, I wrote down crypto because I don't know, maybe in some instance it's the same thing.
You might be right there. Some people are now talking, even investing in the stock market seems to be in the same boat as well. So it just depends on who you're speaking with about that. But so gambling is obviously pretty straightforward there, but what's your take?
So,
and then I love how it bleeds into crypto.
Well, so for me, gambling, and I enjoy gambling. I enjoy, we have here in Tampa Bay, we've got the Seminole Hard Rock Casino, and I've been on cruises, and I love going to Vegas. And so I enjoy gambling, but you got to recognize that the way that I think about gambling is I'm going to set my limit of X amount of dollars, $100,
Right.
$200, whatever, $100 a day, $150 a day, whatever it is. When I hit that limit, I'm done. So if I burn through, if my limit's $100 and I burn through $100 in the first 5 minutes of blackjack, sorry, I got to wait till tomorrow when I have another, when my $100 limit resets. But if I win, now I'm playing with house money. And typically I am good enough and I have enough fun that I can take, a couple of $100 and I can stretch that into 3, 4, 5 hours of gambling and having fun. And so my thought process there is, even if I were to lose, so let's say I started with $100 and I grew it to $500 and then I lost it, but it took me 6 hours. Yeah. I spent $100 to have fun for 6 hours.
Not bad.
I think the problem is, I'll never forget this lesson. I was sitting at a blackjack table once and I was up $900.
Okay.
So I'd started with whatever I'd started with, and I was up $900. And my dad comes walking over. What you doing? I said, Dad, I'm doing great. I'm up $900. My goal is to get to $1,000 over. My dad said, get up and walk away.
There you go.
Because he knew that I was so into it. If I had dropped to 875, I would have kept going to get back over 900. And then if I had dropped to 800, I would have kept going. So you got to know where your limits are, and you got to know, there's these stories. Who is the guy that bet like a couple $1 million on TCU to win the college football national championship? Did you see that story? I don't know that I never bet my heart. I don't think I've ever bet the over-unders on sports tournaments.
I'm not a gambler. I like the games themselves. It's so hard to make the money itself. I'm like, are we playing in those games itself? No, I'm good. I think the most, I'm like the old, and again, the old person, I'll put it like that. Putting the little coins in the slot machine, and that's back in the day. Again, Atlantic City, you put the coins. Now it's all digital. But, I'll be that and like, 25 cents, here we go, try my luck. I think I won once, with a nickel, won $700 at one of the slot machines. I was like, I'm good. There you go. I'm winning. Let's go have breakfast. Like I treated my cousins and stuff like that at the time.
I'm kind of a nerd because I like the mathematics behind the gambling. So I like the mathematics behind and the statistics behind like blackjack. And I'm good at math. So, I can sit there and look and I can count them almost as fast as, and in fact, I learned from the dealers, they don't necessarily add them, but they know when the cards have hit a point where they got to stop drawing, or they know when the cards have hit a point where they're over. So they don't count and know, we're at 22. They just know we're over. And so we, dealer busted, or player went over, player busted. But they don't necessarily count 22, 23, 25, whatever the number is. And then the statistics of like a craps table or the statistics of a roulette table. I guess I'm just a geek over that kind of stuff. And I love sitting there thinking, okay, I rolled a 6. The chances of another 6 coming out are this. So my bet on the craps table can be this. That to me is what I enjoy about gambling. But again, it's always know your limits. So I came with a budget of X to gamble. And when that budget is gone, I can't gamble anymore. And so you just got to be disciplined enough to do that.
That's the key. And that's what gets us into trouble when it comes to, gambling. And we think we have the budget, but it's not written down, or it's not, not told. And I think it comes back to the discipline regarding that. And a lot of us get into trouble when it comes to having our budgets. I love how, Mr. Crushing Debt here, still working the budgets when he's having fun in Vegas. So ladies, he's already taken. Sorry. It's one of those kind of things you can't worry about. But
exactly.
How did that go into crypto then, from gambling into crypto?
Because some of the first stories I heard about crypto were people that would mortgage their house, take out all the money, and then invest that all into crypto. Crypto is going to be the next hot thing. It's going to be the next big thing. Now, I understand crypto, and I have some crypto myself. So I'm not saying crypto is a scam or crypto is evil or anything like that, but it's kind of new. And I think the issue that a lot of people have is they have trouble conceptualizing the value behind crypto. We can look at a dollar and say that's backed by gold, and even that is debatable these days. But crypto, the value, so my value of crypto is what you will pay me for my crypto. And so the people that basically leveraged everything to get all this money and put it into crypto, those people were in essence gambling. So that's how I linked the two. Not that crypto's bad.
That's you talked about perceived value. It's the same thing with baseball cards and NFTs, all of these other things that are coming up. I feel like that's even more gambling, with like stuff that you can't even physically hold. It's a digital footprint or an image of a picture of an event. It sounds too good to be true, is all I'm saying. And you're starting to see the market for a lot of these other things really take a hit on that. And I would agree, if you're doing your mortgage, hey, it looked good in the beginning, right?
Right.
But if you're now in that, downturn where it's like half the value, oh boy, can you at least recover what you initially invested in? I think that's where, again, when do you get off the roller coaster in those situations?
I remember right around, it was the end of 2021, I believe. And I remember somebody saying Bitcoin's going to go over 100,000 in value by the end of 2021.
Right.
And here we are. I actually just looked it up as we were talking. As of right now, one Bitcoin is worth $23,053.59. Right now, as we record this, one Bitcoin's worth $23,000. It was as high as $64,000 in November of 2021, and I think the lowest, it was $16,000 back in November of 2022. So this is as of, we're recording on a different day, but this chart that I'm looking at goes through January 22nd. Is worth $23,053. It'll
get there one day. That's what they'll keep telling us, right? So
maybe.
And that's the thing too, is are we anticipating the growth? Yeah. And that's where, again, that's the gamble when it comes to something of this nature. And I agree. I think crypto, Bitcoin, there's so much potential to a lot of this technology and what we're looking to do. It was hot. It's just not as hot. And I think that's where you got to figure out where do you want to put your money in. So,
well, and arguably, I know Raymond James Stadium here where the Bucks play, I don't believe they accept cash. I don't think Disney World accepts cash. So I get it. The dollar's backed by gold, or theoretically backed by gold. But have we created a society now? Are we involved now in a society where, okay, if it's Bitcoin or if it's US dollar, all the difference is that Bitcoin is not regulated by the U.S. government, where the dollar is regulated by the Fed. Otherwise, even the dollar, in a sense, is electronic currency at this point.
True. It's the value we put into that piece of paper. So but I still like my Benjamins. So sorry, buddy.
My wife texted me today. Can you pick up a $10 bill on the way home? Our son is going on a field trip and needs cash. So
make sure it's crisp and clean.
There you go.
Because you got to show that thing off. So
what else?
All right, Trainwreck for you. So dating, we talked about it in a few episodes before, made fun about it, but dating is obviously, but dating and marrying into six figures of debt. How do we deal with that kind of situation? Because again, at the beginning of a relationship, everybody's frightened high, maybe not so truthful in how we deal with situations of money. Everybody wants to go out. We want to eat. We want a vacation. We're in love. The honeymoon period itself. When you get to the point where it's like, I do.
Right.
And you get into these situations where, holy cow, hopefully you're uncovering some of this before you get married. But what if you uncover it after you're married and you realize, six figures of debt?
Well, so I do get this question a lot, but in terms of when we get married, am I going to inherit my spouse's debt?
Ooh.
And the answer is no. If you get married and your spouse has a ton of debt, no, you won't be liable for that debt just because you got married. Now,
okay, good to know.
What may happen is that you get married, and because your spouse is in debt, they don't have enough money to pay bills, which then causes you to fall behind. But no, just by marrying someone, you will not inherit their debt. And sort of by the same token, if your spouse dies with a lot of individual debt, you won't inherit that debt when your spouse dies. Now, if it's joint debt and your spouse dies, then yeah, you're still responsible to pay it.
So student loans, credit card, if it's in my name, I get married, could the companies though go after the spouse? I mean, they probably know they couldn't, but they will try.
No, I don't even think they can try. If they try to go after the spouse, knowing the spouse doesn't owe it, that's where the creditor harassment laws, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, Florida's Consumer Collection Practices Act, that's where those laws kick in and basically say to the creditor, you committed a violation by trying to go after someone that you knew didn't owe the debt. And so, no, the creditors can get in trouble for that. But, for example, if I have a ton of debt and I get married and my wife has no debt, but because I'm in so much debt and I'm the primary, and let's say I'm not the primary wage earner and my wages get garnished, well, then that decreases the amount of money coming into the household. So now we have less to pay the household debts, which then potentially just creates a snowball.
Interesting. So lesson learned, have a conversation, get to know the situation. Let me throw this into that conversation then. How about business debt? Like, I'm a business owner and I get married, and maybe I have, obviously, if there's money that's there, but debt wise, is there any difference in regards to if I have business debt going into a beautiful relationship?
I mean, typically the one that owes the debt is the one that signed for the debt. So the one that signed the credit card application, the one that signed the lease, the one that signed the mortgage, the one that signed the note, that's the one that owes the debt. But I think it would be the same kind of concept. So
okay,
if I had in fact, I did have the law firm when my wife and I got married. But I don't believe that if something happened to me, my wife would not be responsible for the business debt unless she co-signed for it. So I actually do have a client right now where it was the husband's business. And I've had a couple of clients in this scenario. It was the husband's business. The husband wanted the loan. The bank, for whatever reason, also made the wife sign. And so in that case, made the wife responsible to repay the debt. But the borrower, the spouse, could have said in that case, no, if you want my wife to sign, I'm going to find a different lender that doesn't need my spouse's signature. Sorry, I'm not taking out the loan.
Right. And that's the idea that you want to kind of, so definitely no co-signing.
Right.
Early on in your marriage. Let's play it smart there. I'm kidding, but maybe not. But it's one of those kind of situations that we definitely need to be aware of the laws and the rights when it comes to that. Because I think a lot of people feel it's like, well, that's my spouse. That's my, I probably have to inherit. I have to pay. And I think a lot of that's just misinformation. I think people are just not aware of that. So again, consult your lawyer or your coach, and we can help guide you to the right answers.
Yep. And I know we've got a couple more, but maybe we want to save a few for the post show. So what I'll do now is talk about our other sponsor really quick, talking about not getting into a financial train wreck. We've got to pay the bills. So I'm going to talk about Sam Cohen, our other sponsor. He owns Attorneys First Insurance. Those of you that have been listening for a while know Attorneys First provides errors and omissions coverage or malpractice coverage to attorneys and title companies all over the country. So if you own a law firm, if you own a title company, if you want to get a malpractice coverage quote, contact Sam at attorneysfirst.com, or you can just contact the website, attorneysfirst.com. Sam will give you an apples to apples comparison. Even if you've had a claim before in the past, Sam can possibly get you some coverage. So otherwise, I want to let everyone know to check out the Curbelo Financial page on TikTok. check out the Yesner Law page on YouTube. We are uploading videos now and other content now to Patreon, including some post-show comments that we have after we're done recording, what you get to listen to for free. Also, some other material. If you want to hear these episodes even before they're released, you can find that on Patreon as well. We'll get them up on Patreon before they're released for free on the various podcast players.
Unedited as well, so you get to
Unedited.
hear all of the problems.
Blooper reel and all. So if you want to do that, go to Patreon/Crushing Debt. Again, Yesner Law is a sponsor of the largest networking event in Tampa Bay. So if you are listening before February 17 of 2023, you can get tickets through me. Let me know, and I'll send you the code for that. Otherwise, anything else you want to talk about, George?
No, I just want to say thank you to the listeners. If there's questions or that you want to hear us answer on the show for future episodes, please write that in. Send us some notes there. Follow us on the interwebs. And again, comment and like and post. And of course, from a Patreon perspective, we are looking to really expand on the content. So just follow, and we'll definitely look to add more value into your life.
And if you get an email from either one of us asking for money, it wasn't a true email. It's a scam. Ignore it.
That's a good point.
Unless you're
That's right.
Sam or Mark, and then you might owe us some sponsorship money. But otherwise, it's a scam. Don't fall for it. Anyway, I think that'll do it for this Trainwreck episode.
It's well titled. So I think
Yes.
we're okay there.
Yes, well titled. So, again, we hope that at the end of the month, especially after hearing some of these train wrecks, we hope you avoid them and that you have more money at the end of the month rather than more month at the end of the money. And we will talk to you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Shawn or connect with us on social media. Shawn Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.